What if you could help others to find the power to heal themselves? Physically, emotionally, and spiritually.
When I started teaching my classes, it was in 2002, and I was just doing the past life regressions and contacting the subconscious part. But then as the time went on and we found how powerful this was and what we could do with it, a lot of the students began saying, you know, advanced past life regression doesn't really tell what it's all about. This is so much more than that. We think you should change the name. So it was a few years ago we decided to change the name to Quantum Healing Hypnosis Technique. And this is the healing technique that we've now been teaching it, well, since 2002, that's 12 years.
What if you could time travel with them? Visit mythical places or angelic realms, other worlds, other galaxies. Help others to speak to their higher selves. You can. Dolores has taught thousands of people from across the world how to use QHHT, and now you can learn her method by going directly to dolorescannon.com. And don't forget to mention the discount code MORETALKS.
The author of the sensational international bestseller and the most compelling non-fiction publication of all time is back in London for the first time in 25 years to celebrate Chariots of the Gods' 50th anniversary. Eric Von Däniken Legacy Night. In this 2-hour special, you are invited to share with Eric his most influential discoveries and revelations. Learn about his incredible life journey as an author and researcher. Meet the team behind the highly anticipated Chariots of the Gods 360-degree entertainment franchise. Eric Von Däniken Legacy Night, live streamed from the Princess Anne Theatre, BAFTA 195, Piccadilly, London, October 15th, 2016.
The More Show is supported by Mindscape, Paranormal and UFO Matrix magazines. Available for download on all major digital platforms. The comments and views expressed on The More Show are those of the people that make them and do not necessarily reflect the view of Kevin Moore, The More Show, or this radio station and its affiliate or sponsors. This show is for entertainment purposes only.
Broadcasting from the UK and across the world online. You're now watching the UK's only alternative late night talk show, and I'm your host, Kevin Moore. For the next hour, I'll be covering subjects that will open up your mind and provide you with information you may have never heard before. On today's show, I'm joined with Vernon Kitabu Turner, who is a native of Portsmouth, Virginia, who is an author, poet, contemplative Christian, and martial artist, who was initiated into Zen, which transformed his approach to life and the arts. In 1971, he was made a spiritual master of the martial arts. Vernon has travelled to many countries, demonstrating his insights in temples, churches, and universities. He is the author of Soul Sword, The Way Under the Sword, Bridging the Gap Between East and West, and many more. Vernon Kitabu Turner, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Kevin.
You know, this is, as all my interviews are so different, and I'm very honoured to have you on the show, actually. You actually are, you star in the movie iGod, which we're going to get into during the latter part of this interview, and that's how our paths have crossed. But you've got a story of your own, like we all have. Where do we start with you? Well, actually, probably to start off with, now, your upbringing, I believe you had a Christian upbringing, was that right?
Yes.
but then never were sort of the esoteric or metaphysical subjects really talked about in your household?
Not other esoteric subjects. That's something I ventured into myself. You know, we were basically brought up in a Protestant tradition, but I was always curious about more. And I had a very um, keen interest in the mind. So I was contemplated by nature, and that things began to differ.
Absolutely, absolutely. And um, okay then, okay. Let's go to when I would maybe class it as you had a dark night of the soul, in the sense where you just wanted to be removed from the world, and you couldn't take it anymore. So just going to that point, if you can remember it really, because so much has happened since then. What couldn't you take no more?
Well, I couldn't forget that ever because only later in life did I come to understand that people might call it a form of depression. But the world was dark because there was a lot of pain and suffering. Uh, People were cruel to each other. I was alone during that particular time. I had left home and I was living in New York City without my parents or siblings. And I felt isolated. So this particular time, I was in the park, and I was walking through the park. I stopped under this tree, and I started to pray. And I said, "I can't take this anymore. Please remove this feeling from me, or remove me from the world." And at that moment that I said that prayer, a bird was flying overhead, and he dropped his waist right on my head. And I said, "Oh no, even God is turned against me." But at that particular moment after that, the wind whipped up and it became so strong it was pushing me. So I decided I would go in the direction the wind was pushing me. And as I was moving along, it moved me around the corner, which it shouldn't have been able to do. So I followed it, and then I found myself at the subway station as a west um, at the subway station, and I caught the train, and I got off on West 4th Street, which is Greenwich Village, and I walked into the park, which was Washington Square Park. And as I walked into the park, I felt this spirit of peace come over me. And I said, "Wow, this is so profound." And I kept walking, and I came across this man who was sitting on a park bench with his hands in gasho, or what we would call the prayer posture, and he seemed to be radiating this peace. So I just stood there, and after a while, he looked up at me and he said, "How can I be of service to you?" And I told him that I was interested in learning something about Zen. Now, the thing was, he was Japanese. I didn't know anything about Zen at all, except when I was in school, in high school, my teacher read one of my papers, and her husband, who had a, a doctorate in Oriental philosophy, surmised that I was into Zen because of my writing. And he gave me a gift of a book, The Three Pillars of Zen by Philip Kapleau. Now, this was the summer after I graduated. So I read the book and I knew that word and I knew that feeling. So when I connected with this man, whose name was Nomura Roshi, he said, "I'm a Zen master newly arrived from Japan." And he gave me the address to his Zendo and invited me to come there the next day. Now, So long as I was in his presence, I felt that peace. But by the time I got back to my apartment in Brooklyn, it was gone again. But in that experience, I realized that I could feel the peace, that I could have that, and I wanted it in the deepest, strongest way. I wanted that. So I went back to him the next day, and he taught me how to sit in zazen, shikantaza, which is just sitting. He taught me that, and from that experience there, I had faith that my prayer had been answered, that a means had been given to me to find my way out of this darkness. And it's interesting thing here that there was more than one thing going on. In my Christian experience, I found a kind of a peace, but this was a disturbance on a mental level that was overriding that other thing. It was something else that needed to be done because the mind and the spirit are not the same.
No, that's so true. They're not. Did you prior to having this aha moment as well, if you want to call it that, was there a lot of head noise as well?
A lot of head noise. Not so much head noise as there was a sense of profound sadness.
Right, profound sadness. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
In fact, during that period of time, I think during high school and I didn't smile a lot. Uh, I couldn't smile because something was disturbing me so deeply that I couldn't bring up a real smile. In fact, it wasn't until after I practiced Zen for a period of time and had that Satori that all of that changed and I became spontaneous and buoyant. But that was a couple of years down the road. What I had to do was to stick with my practice, no matter what.
Absolutely, and just for those who may not understand what Zen is, just very briefly, just describe, what is Zen is from your understanding.
For me, it was, well, actually, I can explain that in a very Christian term. Be still and know I'm God. I was in stillness, and in that stillness, my mind was being allowed to settle. Whatever it was that was that proper was being allowed to break up. And so, and sitting in physically still and striving to be mentally still, it's like sand stirred up in a glass of water. If you let it sit long enough, the sand will settle to the bottom and the water will be clear again. So that's what was happening. It was a distilling process going on in the sitting. And the less I disturbed it with my thoughts, the better it became.
Wow, wow. And is this space that you've created for yourself, this knowing, this understanding of who you truly are? You just, it's almost like, knowing that the flesh is temporary, the soul is forever, and that you are a soul in a human body.
Well said.
Hmm.
But it's more of a experiencing of that than a knowing.
Yeah, and the utter peace, I can feel it from you, that comes from you from being in this space as well. And yeah, this is, yeah. Others have described it in different ways. People like Eckhart Tolle have described that space as well, and Neil Donald Walsh will, and many great others as well. And people who are not famous have found that space as well. Yeah. But then you found, you experienced Zen as well and martial arts. So I suppose the question is it a different experience for Zen with martial arts or without?
Well, martial arts became the way I was able to demonstrate what I was experiencing within. When I was growing up, I was the subject of bullies, the target of bullies. That was probably a part of my sadness. For some reason, they just loved to pick on me. And I had asthma. I couldn't, I didn't have the stamina to fight them or the will, really. But my father told me about martial arts and about a teacher in our area named Sergeant C. O'Neill, who was a police instructor in jujitsu. And one day I went to meet him, and he talked to me about the samurai. And at that time, he never took me on as a former student. He became my mentor, and I began to pursue things in my own way, as my which is my way to go as a solo practitioner. And when I began to read up on the samurai, I was I was interested in their philosophy, Bushido, and that was more interesting to me than the actual techniques and all that that evolved from that. And I began to embrace the Bushido code and practice whatever techniques that came my way. And in in a way, I became sort of a samurai like or samurai esque. And before long, the bullies couldn't defeat me because I became fearless. It wasn't like I had a whole lot of techniques, but when they came up against me, I would stand there and immovable because I embraced that mental aspect, immovable mind. I will not be moved. I'm not going to run. And they became afraid. But one situation that demonstrated that the most, I guess, was when I was on the street and my brother and a friend of his were coming down the street and they saw this man coming. And one of the guys, not my brother, but the other guy, called the man crazy. And I did not know it, but he had just been released from state hospital. And he did not take to that kindly. So he attacked the teenager, grabbed him in his throat, and started to strangle him. And I immediately rushed up to him and pulled the youth away from him, and he turned on me. And in that moment, I struck him twice, and he ran. And that started a legend in the neighborhood that I was able to take on a grown man. And I was about 15 or something like that. But it wasn't the same thing that happened later when the Zen experience took place, because my ability in those days were more conscious. I practiced that code. I steeled myself to go forward and swallow my fear and all. But when I had the Satori experience years later, it's as if everything melted away and became effortless. I did not think about martial arts, but I understood the nature of it. And to make sure that I wasn't deluding myself, I sought out some of the top masters I could find. And I was living in New York, so I was able to find Master Moses Powell, who was in the Hall of Fame, um, Master Cleophas Jacobs, Master Aaron Banks, Master Yoshitaro Otani, who descended from a 12th century samurai family, and and others, and they were willing to put me through tests, and I was able to pass through each one of those tests.
That's incredible.
To me, it was something I could not explain. That when someone made a move toward me, I was able to make a move. Their actions caused my response, and it was without effort on my part. And I went one year during the same period of time. I was still writing. I was writing in those days. Still, I started writing actually in my high school years and continuing in my college years until I became a professional writer. And I decided I wanted to write an article for Ring magazine, which was a popular boxing magazine, on embracing the spiritual part or ki or chi in boxing. I wanted to suggest that. So, but they weren't ready for an article like that. I met with the editor and all, and they said, well, we're not interested in crossing over to the Oriental, as they saw it, aspect. But as I was leaving the building with the editor, I was about to leave the building, I noticed a ring was set up in the magazine, and there was a man there whom I later found out was Mr. America. And they were doing a cover, and they were using Mr. America as a model. So I asked if I could demonstrate something. So I got in the ring with Mr. America. And Mr. America, I said, brace yourself. And his name was Franklin Green at the time. He braced himself, and I took one finger, just one finger, and I brought it down slowly and touched his shoulder and caused him to go down to his knees. Now, his manager yelled out, "Don't hurt him," to me. Now, I wasn't going to hurt him. In fact, I was surprised that he went down to his knees. This was not an issue of strength. It's not that I was stronger than Mr. America, but something caused him to go down to his knees. And later on, I would explore that further on in life, and what the Japanese would call ki or chi, I call spirit.
Right. Right.
That something must be stronger than the muscular. So when I got ready to leave the building, they said, "You're going to revolutionize things." And then I decided it was time to go into hiding. I didn't want to revolutionize anything because I couldn't explain what was happening to me.
No. Well, and we're just going to put. We've just been putting, some of the YouTube videos of you demonstrating the power that you have as well, like when the punching and teaching the students as well. When they're trying to bring you down, and just the power through the practice of this, Zen mixed with martial arts has given you as well. It's quite incredible, actually. Even I was taken back by it. How do you turn that power now? Where do you think that power is coming from now?
It's coming from the same place we all come from the source of our being. That when you are quiet, you're still, you're there, you're able to tap into it like a subterranean stream, and it flows to the surface.
Yeah.
Now, you spoke earlier of the punch that I could demonstrate. The only reason I did that punch with the bag and all, with the pad and all, was because I heard some martial artists say, "What kind of martial arts only uses one finger?" A master Sproul said to me to demonstrate to his class, which I did. And I used one finger to take down everybody. So some of the other people who were black belts were like, "Hey, what kind of martial art is that?"
Yeah. Do you train out at all? Do you weight train?
No.
No. Wow. Okay, that's impressive. That's another tick in the box. Okay. Right, okay, well, let's move this in to, because I mean, you've done some fantastic books as well. You really have. And, oh, I just lost my notes a little bit. Well, not lost my notes, but, yeah, one of the ones that struck me as well is Under the Sword, The Way and Mind of a Zen Warrior. That was a great book that I got a chance to read a bit of today as well. And there's some, I mean, they're all good books, but there's some really, there's a lot of spirituality in these books, and you've really been through a process. Right, your life now as an individual, how do you know that you're living an awakened life? What does an awakened life look like, in a sense? If we were to use that term with the way that you live your life as well.
Well, I would say I personally wouldn't know that at all. It's the response to other people show me. It's like one day I went to get my car repaired. This was a few weeks back, and I was on the phone for a moment. I put the phone down, and a man came up to me, and he got down to his knees, and he took my hand, and he kissed it. And he said, "Am I in the presence of one who is high and holy?" And then he held my hand for the longest time, and said he wanted to study with me. And I said, "What brought you here?" He said, "When I came into the door, I knew I had to talk to you," because he felt something. I wasn't doing that. The way I see it, we can be instruments, just like that Zen master was for me. And I felt that power. I'm sure he wasn't singling me out and said, "I'm going to send this over to Kitabu." But I felt it, and I went to him. Someone was able to feel that and was drawn to me, because I feel a change did come over me, but I don't know what that means, or does it mean anything until someone comes up to me and says something.
Yeah, so as we were saying there, to try to define what an awakened life looks like, it's a personal journey. That's what you're saying, in a sense. And
Yeah, but you did hit on an important point.
well, yeah, I was going
Uh,
to say to you as well, sorry, that maybe an awakened life is, how much do I love myself in the moment now? How much am I loving other people in the moment now? As in, what would love do now in this situation? And yeah, just being a bit more aware of those around you.
well, the love part is definitely there, and loving you. The love is like a radiant type of love that includes everything and everyone. So you don't know that until something happens, and that's your response. Is love. Like one person said to me, "Well, do you love everybody?" Like that was not an attack. And I said, "Yes." Doesn't mean you love everything they do, but I can forgive everyone. That's There is no place inside to hold against anyone anything.
Do you find that the bullies that were not very nice towards you in your childhood, have you been able to forgive them?
Or easily.
Yeah.
In fact, when I've run across some of them and later on in life, they embraced me and 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 apologize and all, because they've heard things since then. And it's funny now, but I've never held a grudge. You can't do that. If you're holding a grudge, it's in you.
Absolutely, absolutely. And do you think they were your greatest teachers in disguise, in a sense, as well? Your best friends, but you on this plane, it just wasn't that obvious.
I think they were a part of the learning experience, as you say. They were a part of it. Without them, I would not have been pushed in the direction I went.
No, absolutely not. And how did your family take you when you went towards Zen? Obviously, because your family obviously was, quite Christian. What were their feelings towards you at that time?
That I had become quite weird, and my parents didn't know how to take me. They thought I had crossed over into something like I'd become an atheist or something, and they tried to divert my path very much. But what they didn't realize at the time, but later, was that it was an expansion, an inclusive path, not an exclusive.
Yes, because you could say Zen is connected with the Bible, couldn't you?
Absolutely. In fact, one person read one of my books and said that he thought it was like part of it was like you might be disappointed if you're looking for pure Zen because it's like being connected with the Christian Broadcasting Network. And I thought that was funny because take away the religiosity of things, we're dealing with universality. We're dealing with universality, but man tends to pigeonhole himself and name things and narrow it down. So if we all have a mind, we all have a spirit, we all have a body, that's true in every culture and in every religion. And those mystics who seek to connect to their inner being can only connect to the same thing, but they have different names for it.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. Absolutely, and yeah, they do. Do you feel that with your connection to martial arts as well, which has obviously really helped you on your journey as well? It's been a defining part of you. It's almost like I feel for you that there's a past life connection, in Japan potentially.
Well, it's definitely an affinity because the pathway that led me away from the bullies and all, it started with the Japanese um, and meeting a teacher who was deeply connected with Japan and had studied with Japanese teachers, and then telling me about the samurai, then meeting the Japanese Zen master and all. It's that connection with Japan is very strong, but not only Japan, with Asia itself, you know.
Yes.
Uh, and later on, I met another teacher who had a profound effect on my life, and I'll tell you more about him in a few minutes. But the thing is that yes, that connection is there. That polarity that cannot separate me from there. And I think it's like yin and yang. We're not completely whole one thing. We have another aspect to our being. And I think when I spoke of in my book Kiyasana Zen or Kiyasana Zen, bridging the gap between East and West, that we have East and West within us, just like we have the yin and yang balance. And in my case, I had that affinity toward the East. And so I could accept that. And my parents did not see that. They were more Western oriented.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And do you teach Zen as well nowadays? Is that something that you teach?
Yes,
I thought
I
so.
have students.
I thought so. Yeah, I thought so. Um, what has been your main sort of job in life as well? What have was there other jobs apart from martial arts and Zen?
Well, like I told you, I was a writer.
Of
And
course, yeah. Sorry, yes.
so in the early years after college, I worked with magazines as an editor, and I worked with publishing companies. I wrote for various magazines, newspapers, and all.
Right.
But more and more, my writings began to take on that spiritual nature, and I wrote columns, and they were of spiritual nature, And the magazines I wrote for um, were of that nature too, in many ways. But I became more interested in expressing that. And I was with a publishing company for a while. And eventually they threw me out. They said, you shouldn't be here. You know, they were into putting out spiritual type books. They said, you shouldn't be here. You need to be out there doing what you're supposed to do. And so they gave me my severance pay. And that was about 20 years ago, and I never looked back.
Wow, wow. How would you define your purpose right now? Could you do that?
Define my purpose to share the divine on an ordinary way of life.
Beautiful, beautiful. Okay, and we're going to get into iGod and a few other things very shortly. And I know I'm sort of pushing us on here because there's so much to get through. In your book, Under the Sword, you talk about, for example, I have no friends and make my mind my friend. That's deep.
That was, remember I told you that I embraced the Bushido code? That was a part of that.
Yeah, if only I think it's a good thing to make our mind a friend because I speak to people as we all do, and they say to me how much mind chatter that they have, and I think we make our mind our enemy sometimes.
And indeed, in fact, we are taught to make our mind our enemies because we are taught to doubt it. We are taught not to believe in ourselves and all. So we don't befriend it. We don't believe that it's on our side. And that samurai code, the Bushido code, that was about teaching the samurai to trust in his instincts, to make them be on his side.
Yeah, it's so important. And another one, you say, I have no parents, I make heaven and earth my parents.
Going beyond the physical, the flesh and blood, to realize that what are we really born of? You know, that our parents can say, well, yes, we conceived you and all, but really, who conceived them? And then go back and back and back and back until actually you're back to heaven and earth, the big picture.
Yeah, yeah, the expansive self, absolutely. Um, yeah, absolutely. Do you think some of us lose our center?
I think that's easy to do. We get so caught up in external things that we lose that sense of self. And I don't mean self in a smaller sense, ego self, but but our centeredness of being spinning around from that center in which we just naturally flow. We naturally flow from that center. We don't have to see it. We just have to be it.
Absolutely, and yeah, absolutely, okay, so obviously you embrace oneness. That's. Would you say that's a truth of yours?
Yes, absolutely.
And do you think if we embrace that more, all of us, forget just thinking family is oneness, but I mean that we're all family, we're all one. Wouldn't that change the world overnight?
It certainly would. The other day, I put a post on Facebook about, I mentioned St. Patrick's Day, and I said, Happy St. Patrick's Day to the Irish and all of us, because after all, we are all one, created of one blood. And a lot of people responded to that with a hearty amen. So people deep down inside know that despite the different colorations and appearances, we are all fundamentally the same. We are man. kind.
And going from that then, what does Zen have to say, or what advice would it give, in the sense, or could you give, coming from that space, in souls suffering abroad? I mean, I know there's souls suffering at home right now, in a sense, but I mean, sometimes we don't always see the suffering closest to us, but there is, those having it difficult abroad as well.
You feel it as if it's happening to you, because it is. There is no separation of time and space when it comes to human suffering and all. We only do that when we divide ourselves, when we say them and us. We divide ourselves, we can create a partition in our mind that makes us feel safely on the other side of the fence. But in truth, that is not the case. When we no longer feel the pain of another, we are already dying, or if not already dead.
Wow, Kitabu, that's so deep. Yeah, that's why it probably bothers me at a deeper level when I'm seeing the suffering of others abroad. And that's not taking away, like I said in the beginning of the question, the suffering for the people in our own country, because there's suffering with people where you are in America, isn't there? There's people in suffering in the sense, not just health-wise, but also obviously poverty-wise, all sorts of suffering, whatever it might be, even depression, right, is a form of suffering. But, yeah, it's true what you say. It's because we're all connected. Those who feel that we remember that connection. It's almost like, damn, what can I do about it? And what can I do about it?
Well, even caring is doing something about it, because there are different levels of activity. There is the physical, when you send some food or whatever, but there is the emotional support, there's the spiritual support, which helps in the subtle realms. So when you care, there are things you can do. You can help somebody close at hand in a way you might not be able to help someone at a long distance. But you can send love their way. You can send peace their way. And it makes a difference, like a cool breeze on a summer night.
Yeah, it's so true what you say. Well, if it resonates what you're saying with me, it completely does. And you pick this up in your books as well. Most definitely, I did when I was reading them today. Well, okay. With the recent terrorist attack in Brussels, what do we do about where do we stand in your understanding of spirituality, and in the sense of how to not fix the issue with ISIS, because I don't think you can, in a sense. It's got to come from them. But what advice would you give for as a warrior, in the sense of the spiritual issues with terrorism?
Well, I wrote about that yesterday, and I said my prayers go out to the people of Brussels and Belgium, but my prayers also go out to the jihadists, that they will realize that they are being seduced into committing wholesale murder in the name of the, quote, God of peace, unquote. How can you expect to enter the kingdom of heaven when you commit such atrocities? And then from that, I received responses from other people who said they were joining in that prayer. And they were joining in the prayer for the jihadists as well, that they will have a change of mind, that they will realize that they are being seduced, that this cannot be truly a spiritual act to take the life of the innocent and win heaven.
No, that's really amazing what you've just said there. Actually, just to even do that, and it's true that is one way forward. Absolutely, yes, because obviously the God of the Quran, or the in that sense, it's the Quran. No matter what, well, not that I've read the Quran, but I wouldn't want to I hope it's not coming from fear and not fear, sorry, but causing pain to others by telling people to go on a jihadi in a sense and go kill people. I don't believe it's coming from that space. I think, as you said, Allah is a God of love.
Salam means peace. When you say Assalamu alaikum, it means peace. Salam. And in the early years, I also had teachers that were Islamic mystics, and they never talked about violence.
Violence, no, absolutely. Of course they never. No, no.
And so it's where that comes from. It's a perverted interpretation.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. But then, we could easily look at the terrible things that Christianity did as well in the name of, back in the day. But we know better now, don't we? We're more aware. We're more actualized. We're more conscious of our actions. Well, we should be at this stage. But yes, and I see a world one day where potentially it's coming from a completely different space. Maybe. I wonder sometimes, how long will religions last for? Will they be here with man forever, or will we move beyond to have to find God in religion, and we can find God outside of religion?
Well, we can. In fact, that's what Looking Within is about. Religion, excuse me, comes from the word religare, which means to bind. We are bound to some type of dogma or whatever case may be. But when you look within, you're going back to your fundamental nature, and that's the way it was in the beginning when it was one-on-one. That cannot be less than religion, to be able to connect one-on-one, to go back to the source of your being. And that's awakening. You're not going through a secondary way or outside party.
Do you know what they say in America? 40% of Americans right now, and I think this is a fact, 40% of Americans have no religion whatsoever, which it never used to be the case. 40%'s, quite a high figure, really, to have no religion. And I think that's a sign of, people are walking away from the big churches and stuff, and they're trying to find the church within.
Yeah, and that's not a bad thing. Because when it becomes a ritual, then it's not enough. Not that people don't find some truth in a church or can't find it in church, but they can't be satisfied with just that. They have to keep looking within.
Absolutely. And, okay, now getting into God as well. This is an area which I do find difficult sometimes, because I think our understanding of God has a lot of well, I don't think we even to try to describe it, I think it's just a word. And I know other people will use the word the universe, the source, and these are the words to sort of describe the undescribable. But people say that human beings are God in expression, which I could probably go down that road. But maybe God is even beyond our understanding, that it's not what we think it is. It's maybe the accumulation of everything, when we cross over, all the energy that we are and more. But then, I remember watching iGod the movie, which we're going to now get into, and there was Neil Donald Walsh and two other, Greg Biner, and I've probably got that name wrong there, and Deepak Chakra, and they each had a uniquely different take on what God is. There's no one truth. There's no defining truth. That's my point.
Well, too big a subject to define. Too big. The moment we begin to define, we have already narrowed it, and therefore it's become finite.
That word God, some people hate that word. It makes them angry. And it's very difficult. You can't talk about it to some people. Have you come across that?
but not so much as hating it as avoiding the topic altogether.
That's a good way to put it. Probably, yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think it's yeah. Well, that could be one way of saying it. Definitely.
Let me share something with you because I want to mention him. I told you that I had other teachers. 10 years after I met the Zen master, um, I was home with some friends, and one of my friends said, "This guru is going to be in town tonight." I had never had any interest in any gurus, so she gave me the paper, and I looked at it, and this name came out of the paper and touched me right here in my third eye. And I said, I have to go. I must go to see him. So we all went and got in the car, three of us, went to the Aquarian Age Yoga Center. And their speaking was Satguru Sankesavadas from India. And I'm looking at him, and I see a white light shining around him. So I turn to my friends and I say, "Do you see what I see?" And they said, "No." So after he spoke, I had to speak to him alone, or at least try to. So they took him in the back room and they had security on the room. But then I had already been to Zen for a long time. I didn't stop at the security. I just walked like I was going to walk through them, and they parted and let me in. And I went in, and I had never done this before. I walked up to him, got down to my knees, and embraced his feet. I'd never done that before because you don't bow down to men, less in the Western sense. But I did that, and he put his hand on top of my head, and he said, "I see a light shining from you. You have been chosen by God to be a spiritual teacher." And then he asked this other teacher that was there to pray for me. And as I was getting ready to leave, he sent Om Kadas, who was a Swami, to come behind me. And so Om Kadas said, "The master says to give you this." And he gave me a rose. And when I looked at that flower, everything vanished but the flower. And I started to cry. And I said, "You don't know what you just did." Because I had said to God after I left New York and was no longer in touch with the Zen master, I said, "If you want me to have another teacher, let us have an agreement. Have that teacher give me a rose." And I said that because one of the names for Christ was the Rose of Sharon. So here I was leaving an Indian guru, and he sends a rose to me. So I go back into him, and he stands up and holds out his arms, and he said, "Come to me." And I went to him and got in his arms, and he said, "This is my son." And when he embraced me, I felt like I was in the arms of pure love. That's all I felt was pure love. And I did not feel like a human being was embracing me at all. He felt like he had no weight, no substance. And that's what I realized, that whatever he wasn't on the same plane as everybody else in that room, and that some transformation had taken place. Now, I like to relate to that. When I had accepted Christ as a child and the minister embraced me, I felt something very similar, that the minister wasn't the one that was embracing me, but that Christ himself was embracing me. And that's what I felt with the guru, that I was feeling the divine embracing me through the form of the teacher. And we were together for the next 20 years. I was always able to reach him. He made it a command that I was never to be turned away. So no matter where he was in the world, he would always receive my call. And in 1982, he stated to me, when I introduced him to various people, got him in churches and written about in different ways, he said, I want you to bridge the gap between East and West. That's what he said. How do you do that? How do you bridge the gap between East and West?
Yeah.
I didn't know how to do that. But that's what he said. That is your mission, to bridge the gap between East and West. And with this book, Kiyasano Zen, Bridging the Gap Between East and West, it's like things were coming together more.
Of course. Because back then as well, books still do nowadays, but it reaches people on a global scale, doesn't it? It reaches the right people as well. Absolutely.
And yes.
It's so interesting what you've been through, these experiences. Okay, would you say that we are all able? Would you say we are all able to connect to God through through meditation, in a sense that if we really wanted to speak to God, we could just go into meditation and we could be quiet, be still, and we could ask questions and we would get the answers back?
First, I think that the being we call God is always seeking us. So he's delighted when we start seeking him. And we'll do everything to make it possible for the connection to take place. So if we sit in meditation or we involve ourselves in an act of prayer, we can be sure that reaching is going on already. It's a two-way connection. So I don't think anyone is turned away if they're sincere in their search.
No, absolutely not. We could be even writing him a nasty letter, and I'm sure he could reply as well, as happened with Neil Donald Walsh. And when I say connect to God, what I'm also saying as well is that I believe that we all have a higher self. There's a part of us which is in some dimension that we come from, that we connect back to when we cross back over. We came from it, we go back to it, and by connecting with a higher self or oversource, a higher self or oversoul, God is really us in a sense. We are God. Can you go down that road that we are God?
Well, not to the point where the ego thinks it is God directly, but that God is us in some way. Okay, there is a saying: before the body was formed and all, I was in God, and when the body is gone again, I am once again in God again. God is in me and I'm in God. The essence of our being, the spirit, is always with God because that's where it originates. But our consciousness, this is where we wrestle. If I say I am God, what do I mean by that? Do I mean I created the universe? The universe collectively, you can say collectively, we are in some sense. But I think it's dangerous when you think there's not more. It's dangerous to say I am God, as in I am the total package.
There is the side where, okay, well, it's difficult to explain the unexplainable, because I can't remember being back home, and I don't remember coming from there to come here. I just know that it's my truth to say I know I did come from there, but amnesia and everything else, I can't remember it. So we don't really know the bigger picture, and it's great to have these debates and everything else, because
See if I can help a little bit more
Yeah,
because
yeah,
I'm having a flashback.
yeah.
I'm
Absolutely.
having a flashback now. When I had my Satori, I ceased to exist. And then I came back into existence. And in coming back into existence, it was from the finest particle to the totality, till I was everything. I was the rock, I was the tree, I was the animals, I was the sand, I was the water, every aspect of the being before I became me again. So taking it out to this finest level, and I could say when there was nothing but God. When there was nothing but God, there was no me. And
Well,
then,
yeah,
so
okay.
you're talking about fine tuning.
Would you say though? I mean, there's been lots of information out there, even channel texts like from Jane Roberts, who channeled Seth, and Seth talked about that. You know, you do not lose your personality. The personality will always remain. You are this experience you have now you will not be lost in some greater being like God or sucked back in, and you won't remember this reality ever again as it's downloaded into some sort of collective. It's not like that. You retain this as who you are. You don't lose your mind in a sense. You keep the consciousness. It belongs to you, and you are more powerful than you could ever imagine. You've just forgotten that power. Your higher soul or oversoul has immense connection to the wondrous, unexplainable, unlimited power that's available to you on the dimensions that we go back to when we cross over, of the essence of who we truly are. And by going into meditation, we're able to bring and connect with our higher self and God, in a sense. That this universal power that we are, and we're able to really, have all the answers that we're really searching. We don't need to go to a guru to find the answers. It's good to go to a guru to remember, or someone like yourself. But once you have, and you can just go quietly within inside, and you actually have the power yourself to find anything that's really concerning you in this present moment.
Well, it is all within the self. And the only thing another person should do for you is point you back there to yourself, not to them, but to them, back to you. Um, from the beginning, there's a difference. From the beginning, there's a saying. From the beginning, now the thing is. From the beginning or from the first, now the thing is. Now we're in a world where everything is. That's the difference. How do we relate to the world where everything is? We don't want to go back to where there was nothing. And that's not what it's about. So we were created to be, and that's what we are. So I can agree that it is all the living. You are created to be Kevin, to be who you are. Not the name so much, but the person. If that ceases to be, then the whole thing has failed. If I can't connect with you some other time in space and time, then what does that mean? So I know that I can one day, because you, who you are you remain contained within that reality, and I remain contained within my reality, and I can't obliterate you, not like we can in shooting somebody with a gun and kill them. You can't kill the soul. So I can obliterate your being, so I can reconnect with your being. So, in that larger sense, yes, we are, but one is not greater than the other. We are all that, all of us.
Absolutely. Yeah. Now that I agree, absolutely. We are saying the same thing in that sense. Well, we're saying the same thing in general,
That's a
but yeah,
scramble around it.
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I completely agree with you what you're saying there. Absolutely. And it's you put it in such a dear way as well. It's really quite zenful, I guess. Yeah, it really is good to come from that different perspective. Yeah, really, if we were to sum this up, then in some respects about finding peace within one's life, do you think? What do you find people's general lives are like out there when they come to see you for help and stuff? Do you think there's a lot of people in pain in different ways?
Yes, they're searching for something outside of themselves that can never be found, or they're looking for a philosophy or in words. They're looking for something in words that does not really exist in words. It's the and that searching you already have it because you were born with it. Except you come as a child, you shall in no wise find the kingdom of heaven. A child has all the that it needs to be there, and in its spontaneity, its narrowness, it's all there. As we grow older and accumulate data and things, we become distant from the truth. So it's an emptying out process rather than a filling up process. If we can learn to throw things out of our mind, we will be better.
God, yeah, you see, I'm using the word there. God, you're so right. Yes, we would if we could go back into that. There's something you said very interesting earlier on, leading on from this as well, where you said this was off air. This was when I said to you, just doing a quick audio check. I said, "What are you doing tomorrow?" And you said, "I don't worry about tomorrow." And that's emptying out there as well, isn't it? To be able to come from that space.
Yes, it's tomorrow is a concept. It's an idea, but it's not something we can actually grab. As long as we hold the idea, we can fill up the basket full of tomorrow things we're going to do. But tomorrow is, in fact, today, right now. That's
Yes.
what I said yesterday.
Yes, you're just so right. Right now is only, but it's the most important. Right now with me and you, this is my most important moment right now, and this is your most important moment right now. And thankfully, we're sharing that moment together, right?
And
Yeah, but we don't care about what's just happened. And like you say, you're not, you're marking in your diary as a potential of what you're going to do tomorrow. So it helps you to remember tomorrow as you, put it in your diary about me. But you're not going out of into the mind or out of the mind into tomorrow. And that's where a lot of our worry comes from. For some people, it's worrying about what they did in the past or whatever's happened, or worrying about tomorrow in a sense, or is this person going to forgive me, or whatever it might be.
yeah, and they accumulate all of these feelings that have no place in reality, only in their mind, and then they get weighed down by that.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Um, what's your most important message in the way we could come from a more peaceful existence to ourselves and others?
Well, what you treasure for yourself, you should treasure for others. In other words, there can't be any peace in the world unless there's peace in you. It's not something that exists on its own. If you can have peace, then it radiates outward and you can pacify those around you too. But we have to develop within ourselves because we are like connected. We are connected. And you might think, I can go out here and make there be something over there. But if you can have it in you, it already exists.
So when I'm cheating on someone else, that's hurting other people. When I'm being deceitful to someone else, that's rippling out there to others. When I'm having an affair with someone else and destroying maybe the family that I've got, that's hurting others. When we take an action that's knowingly hurting someone else, it's hurting others.
Yes, because on the spiritual field, we are definitely connected. Physically, we are apart. Your body is where it is, and my body is where it is. But in the spiritual field, we're all connected. We're like in the same ocean. You might be swimming around as a shark or a dolphin, and I could be swimming around as a killer whale or whatever case may be. But we're in that same ocean together. And if the ocean is affected, we're affected. So in the spiritual realm, it's the vastness. So as we become more spiritual, we are embracing the whole. And
Wow.
that's to do the
Wow.
good.
Yeah, okay, that's quite deep. Um, and I'll just add this. I know this is going off tangent a bit here, but and I guess the animal kingdom is different to our consciousness in a sense. When we look at the animal kingdom where it's it kills to survive, it doesn't think of these things. Right? Okay, I'm going to kill this animal, and am I hurt? And then this is rippling out, to connected because we're all to hurt other animals. I think it's a different consciousness, isn't it, for that kingdom?
They can't go to the grocery store.
Yeah, yeah. I know. I know. That sounds a stupid question, but it's just it just came into my head for someone that may be thinking it.
Stupid is because they it's their food, which is how we see our food when we prepare it. It's not killing because it's not an intentional act of destruction. It is simply feeding a hunger that is necessary to survive. So we have an intent. We hunt for pleasure.
Well, that's different. Yeah, well, that's different. Yeah, that hunting for pleasure, I don't endorse that at all. To make another animal suffer for no reason. No, definitely not. Wow, this is interesting. Okay, getting onto the iGod movie as well. How did you get involved with that movie? Were you contacted to come into that movie?
Well, actually, I was visiting the home of the director just on a courtesy, just visit. And the writer, one of the writers of the movie, Bob Friedman, was there, and he said, um, "Include Kitabu in the movie," just like that. And they said, "That's a great idea." That's how it happened.
Wow. Okay. You divine intervention. You were meant to be there, man. You were meant to be there.
I had no idea they were filming a movie at the time.
Yeah. Well, well. Actually, with the movie as well. Just for those who may be thinking, well, what is I got the movie? Can you summarize it at all?
Well, we have been talking about it in a way.
Yeah.
Um, People have the different ideas of what or who God is, and the movie explores those ideas. I call it the biggest question of all time: how people view God or the divine. And so the director interviews many people from many walks of life and different religions and get them to expound on the subject of God, how they see God. And he asked me.
No, it's great. I think you were a great choice, and As you know, as we've just said, there it's meant to be. Now we've just been playing the trailer next to you on the screen, so that if people are wondering what that video is, that's the trailer for iGod, and we'll link the movie just down below as well for the website and everything else. I've had the chance to watch it today, and of course, just to get an idea of what you did in the movie, and just an idea for the direction for this interview. And it's never an easy one when talking about these subjects, because they're just, well, we could be here a lifetime.
Well, we will be.
Yeah, absolutely.
Definitely not easy.
No, it's not. I find it quite yeah. It's just my truth on God is every day is different. That's all I can say. But it's always increasing in a level, in a sense. It always seems to be expanding, which is always nice. It's like the universe; it just seems to go on forever. The ideas of it. Now I know that you are right now working on a new book as well, which is going to be a fascinating book, I think, because it's not that it's separate from this sort of subject, but it's really on your, I believe, if I've got this right, your near-death experience.
Well, it was actually more than a near-death experience, because I actually flatlined.
Sorry, right, wow, okay, so you did get to leave, well, not that you wanted to, but you actually left your body, did you? Did you go back home?
In the deepest sense, to the void.
Yeah,
Not to heaven.
The void.
My experience in the book, about the book, really is about what happened after I returned.
Right. Well, we won't get into. Let's leave it there. Because that's going to be in the book.
Yeah.
But let me ask you. I don't really talk about this much, but I had a near-death experience, and I'd done a lot of drugs, basically, and I was in a very bad place. I was in Vegas, of all places. I lost my partner and everything else, and I really was in a very bad place. This was many years ago. This was, and I don't talk about it much because it was, I haven't really been able to put it into context really. But I believe I did leave my body, and I remember it was a choice of, do I want to go or do I want to stay? And just very briefly, I remember the feeling of leaving my body and going into this tunnel, and it wasn't a very big tunnel, but you used a good word there, actually, vortex, like this vortex around me. My God, the unconditional love was just nothing like I'd ever experienced before. Did you get that feeling as well, the unconditional love?
What I experienced was peace.
God, if that's peace, I'm all for it. It could have been. I just felt
the return.
Yeah, well, I just felt all these voices around me, and all this energy, these beings, but they wasn't like we are right now. It was it was no bodies or anything like that, but it was just an amazing experience, and I've just remembered that experience talking to yourself. So that's mentioning about your experience, but yes, so that's something that you're writing about.
Yes.
Wow. Okay, well that's going to be, as your other books have been, absolutely great. Now, we've been putting your books on the screen throughout this interview as well. Just for if this is an audio podcast as well in the future, what is your website as well?
Soulsword.com.
Sword.
SOUL sword.com.
Okay, wonderful. All right, well, that's been coming up on the screen as well throughout this interview, and there's links to your books on your website, but you can also, obviously they're all available from Amazon as well, so they're all available from .co.uk and .com. What would you like to be the sort of final message, or the most important message of your work to the audience?
I would say, no matter what you get involved in your everyday life, external life, take time out to explore your inner life, because it's what's going to be with you always. Everything else is fading away. Seek the divine connection within yourself.
Well, Kitabu, I can only say it's been a real honor having you on, my friend. It really, really has. Just thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you, Kevin. I appreciate it very much.
Well, we've come to an end on tonight's show. Don't forget that you can watch and listen to all our past interviews on the More Show's official YouTube channel. Remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel for new daily shows. You may also find out more on all past and upcoming guests on the show via themoreshow.co.uk, and do like us on Facebook and Twitter for the latest updates. So until next time, be safe.